If you want to say fair grounds, you introduced me as a Palestinian controversial...
I actually corrected myself.
Right, so...
I said pro-Palestinian. I meant to say pro-Palestinian.
So why did the word controversial come into play?
I think you're controversial.
So are you.
Yeah, I wouldn't deny
So is
that.
the ambassador. Why didn't you introduce her in that manner?
I'm happy to say that to many people, her views would be controversial.
So why didn't you introduce me as the Oxford graduate?
Do you want to be introduced as that?
Yes.
Okay, you're an Oxford graduate.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Now, from a psychological viewpoint, this is where the discussion ended. And this, by the way, is right at the start, where Piers Morgan, even though he's claiming that we are going to do it on the fair grounds and so on and so forth, but he started with certain wording. And, you know, in media, the words matter a lot. The way you present someone that he's a controversial pro-Palestinian activist, disregarding what his political views are, disregarding his academic attainments, and you present someone, so this is basically poisoning the well. So you present someone in a way that is, before you even listen to the person, you've made up his mind that there's a controversial person, is a pro-Palestinian. That is basically what it was. But the brilliant job done by Mohammed Hijab, he kept his composure, and right at the outset, he actually flipped the structure of the program. It was supposed to be Piers Morgan applying pressure on Mohammed Hijab, and Mohammed Hijab, he should have been under pressure. He should have been put under pressure to present his views. But right at the outset, he's sitting there as a boss man, and Piers Morgan is there to explain himself and defend himself. And the program hasn't even started yet. That is just amazing. And I really wanted to make sure that I bring this up to explain that psychologically speaking, he was defeated right at the outset. Let's move to the second one.
They're stopping them from electricity, water, which is a war crime under Geneva 4 of the Geneva Convention, Protocol 4 of the Geneva Convention. So this is something I'm surprised you didn't actually mention to the ambassador. But
I did mention it.
You didn't say it's a war crime.
Well, I think it's an arguable point whether it's a war crime.
Okay. It's an arguable point if it is a war crime or not. No, it isn't. It actually is a war crime. And even if it is not a war crime, which it is, by the way, but let's take the argument that what if it is not? If you have a guest on your show and you want to debunk him, and let's not make any mistake, the whole reason Mohammed Hijab was invited there, even though he'd been very provocative in the build-up to it, and Piers Morgan was literally strong-armed that he had to bring him on because he's been called so many different things by Mohammed Hijab. But again, he didn't call him so that he can say whatever he wanted to say. He was invited there so that he could be brutally debunked, and the news would go something like this, that a Muslim attempted to protect the case of Palestine, but he failed. That was the whole idea. Now, you need to do enough homework that if your guest is mentioning a specific provision of international law to say that this makes it a war crime, you can't say, well, I am not sure if it is. No, you need to mention the law or explain what is wrong with your explanation. You can't say it is debatable. It isn't debatable. It can't be debatable. Imagine a Palestinian doing this to an Israeli. Would that be debatable? But this is the type of hypocrisy which I absolutely commend Mohammed Hijab for, that through his surgical questions, the nature of questions he came up with were absolutely amazing. All he had to do was just poke the question at the right place, and the rest, as they say, became the history that we are already aware of, that the Western media is full of hypocrisy, and this program is the biggest evidence of how to debunk them, or the biggest, not the evidence I should say, it's the biggest sort of a blueprint to understand how to expose them. Let's move on, shall we?
I mean, when people are taking grandmothers and executing them, kidnapping young children, when they're killing babies in their cribs, we can agree that's war crime, right?
Now, in this part, Piers Morgan did what the Western media does best, and that is you play with the emotions, bring up the things, whether they are verified or they are not, just bring them up, and the idea is that you can plant enough emotions in the listener's mind that, look, that is how bad they are. But the whole point is not that you become emotional. You've invited someone so that they can have their rational argument, mentioning international law, international treaties, United Nations, and so forth. But you just disregard all that and you say that this is what Hamas has done. Now, what Mohammed Hijab did was 10 times better than a journalist who has been a journalist for I believe, 3 decades. So what I'm trying to say is that earlier, when Muhammad Hijab mentioned a very specific international law or provision of it, there was no answer from Piers Morgan. He didn't say, well, show me, how do you connect that with what Israelis are doing? He came up, oh no, we are not sure, it is debatable. But when he mentioned specific things, see what Muhammad Hijab did.
Surely, of course, 100%.
Right.
But babies in the crib, sorry, what was the evidence for that?
You don't believe that happened?
What's your source?
Is a genuine, legitimate picture.
What is your source?
Are you seriously arguing that babies weren't killed?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, what are you saying?
I'm saying, give me a source.
Yeah.
You know full well you've been fired from the Daily Mirror for fake images.
No, that is just brilliant. I mean, he agreed with something which was established already, because right at the outset, Muhammad Hijab made it very, very clear that Islam is against killing the civilians and children and so forth, so we cannot condone this if Hamas had done this. So he reasserted his position, did not waste any time, quickly agreed, but then he went on to the actual point, which is, if you are saying that the babies in cribs were killed, what is your evidence? Give me the source. Now, when a non-journalist is pressing a journalist to produce the source, and the journalist has started to raise his voice, you know that there is nothing to debate on any further. There is no point to be made. Now, all you can do is be more emotional. All you can do is throw more of the emotional stuff. And that is what he has been doing. So it's absolutely brilliant performance by Muhammad Hijab. And again, he is not the journalist here. It's the other guy who is supposed to lead the program, but throughout he is forced to throw emotional stuff, to raise his voice, be rude, which he did a good job in the end by recomposing himself after the break. But at that point, he was being absolutely crushed.
What red herring?
This is a red herring because already 1,023 children have been killed in Gaza. That's why. And you didn't ask the ambassador that question.
I literally asked the ambassador.
No,
I said 3,000 people have already been killed in a week
in
Gaza.
Well, you didn't ask her whether
did you even listen to my interview with the ambassador?
I did listen, but excuse me.
Well, don't put words in my mouth or say I didn't ask a question.
Let me ask you a question. Do you condemn the killing of those children by the IDF?
Very precise question. And any person with sane mind will not have any problem understanding this question. And Muhammad Hijab is again cutting through the nonsense he was coming up with, was saying that, look, don't go to the red herring, don't just throw us off the course. There's a simple question there. You should have asked this question the ambassador, which you did not. Again, he's maintaining, by that I mean Piers Morgan, that he did, but forget all that. It's a simple question now. IDF killed babies. Undeniable fact. More than 1,000 babies, children have been killed by the IDF. Do you condemn that? That is the question.
I'll tell you what I condemn.
Yes or no?
I'm going to answer your question honestly and truthfully.
Sure.
And because I've tweeted about this, right?
Oh, okay.
I think that what happened on October the 7th was one of the worst atrocities I have ever had to read about.
There you go. IDF killed babies. Do you condemn that? Oh, no, I condemn Hamas. That is not the question, Piers. 3 decades worth of journalism. It's a simple question. Do you condemn IDF killing babies? And when you ask the same question to Muhammad Hijab, whether you condemn Hamas for doing the same thing, he said, yes, absolutely, we do that. That is how an honest, upstanding person speaks. You are the one who is always at least pretending that you advocate for the integrity of journalism, or the journalistic integrity and so forth, and being upstanding person and all those good things that I don't want to repeat here because of the lack of time. All you had to do is just say, yes, I condemn that, because there is no other answer. Or the worst answer than not condemning is that I condemn Hamas. And then he kept on with that, because Muhammad Hijab didn't let him off the hook just like that. He pressed the issue and then see how Piers Morgan behaved.
Do you condemn them from killing civilians or not?
I do not. I will defend them this week.
Yes or no?
Wait.
Yes or no?
I will defend them this week in defending themselves against one of the worst terror attacks ever.
Again, the question is, do you condemn IDF killing civilians? And the answer cannot be, oh, I condemn Hamas, or I believe that it's their right to defend themselves. That's for the Israelis. So why is it that the Israel's right to defend itself means that they have to kill civilians? That's a very good question. And again, hats off to Muhammad Hijab that he pushed the issue to the extent that Piers Morgan literally had to take his clothes off, metaphorically speaking. Listen to this bit.
So you can kill civilians for that?
You can target Hamas.
Can you target... No, hold on.
And if Hamas...
You can target Hamas. So this is where the clothes are being taken off bit by bit. Right? This is where Muhammad Hijab is doing something to him that he never thought would happen to him. I mean, after this interview, the only thing that I respect Piers Morgan for is that he actually had courage to upload the video. Not many people would, the way they were taken to cleaners. But you know what? The worst part is yet to come. Let's talk about that.
If Israel's purpose is to rid the world of Hamas after the atrocity of October the 7th, how do they do that, given that Hamas embeds itself in civilian areas in the way that it does? Everyone knows that in Gaza.
Okay.
How do they do that in the surgically clean way that you seem to think they should be doing?
Okay, can I say...
How do you not kill civilians?
Beautiful.
This is game over. Because for far too long, they have tried, the Western journalists, they have tried not to say things like, it is necessary to kill civilians. They have tried their best to come up with alternative adjectives, euphemisms and metaphors and you name it. But again, I love this man, Muhammad Hijab. He pushed him to the level where Piers Morgan is saying that tell me a way by which you don't kill civilians. So he's saying that it is absolutely necessary to kill civilians. Now that is the definition of promoting terrorism. No international law allows you to kill civilians. But if you say that, look, they are killing civilians because, well, that is the only way. So what you're saying is that they are committing terrorism and you are saying they are doing the right job. And here's the most interesting thing. This man is supposed to be unbiased person who wants to play on fairer grounds. And what is that fair ground? That you become a mouthpiece for IDF and you say that, well, they have killed innocent civilians and I think they've done a good job. You are supposed to be a man of courage because that is what journalists are, or they should be, to say that I condemn. But you can't say that, can you? Again, Muhammad Hijab, I'm really in love with this man. Move on.
So let me ask you a question now. If there was IRA in Belfast and they were occupying council properties and so on, and then we have a plane of RAF going to destroy that council property, destroy all of Belfast, flatten it with all the white people, I'm going to use the term white, all the white people, council estates living in there, with the excuse that we're doing it because it's proportionate defense to the terrorists. What would you say about that?
On one side, I should not laugh because we are talking about something which is very, very sensitive. But on the other hand, I can't help it. I mean, Muhammad Hijab is now interviewing Piers Morgan and should be other way around. Muhammad Hijab should be defending his positions, but he's literally, third time I'm going to say, he has taken him to the cleaners to the extent that Piers Morgan has to defend himself for no reason. He's no Israel, he's no IDF, he has no reason to defend all those things, but he's been pressed, and the more he's been pressed, the more he's making it evident that, yes, I speak for Israel. And that's exactly what he does. It's a brilliant question, hypothetical question. And the answer can't be I don't deal with hypothetics because otherwise you can't do any thought experiments at all. You can't develop political ideas. You can't philosophize anything if you don't do hypothetics. You have to deal with them. And the question is that if RAF does that to a terrorist group in Ireland, would that be justified? No, it wouldn't be. If that is not justified in Ireland, well, that's not justified anywhere. It's that simple. And if you really are an open and honest person, all you have to do is just be what you claim to be. Open and honest and say, this is wrong, I don't stand by that. But like I said, the whole program, I mean, this is one of the worst programs. It will go down as one of the worst programs for Piers Morgan because of this reason, that he was supposed to ask questions and put Muhammad Hijab under pressure, but mostly it has been the case that Muhammad Hijab has asked him questions and Piers Morgan had to defend himself. I mean, if I were him, I'd simply say, Hijab, I listen to your questions. These are very good questions. Next time I'll get an Israeli on board and ask them questions because as a journalist, that is what my job is. But as an advocate, there is something else. And that's exactly what he was. I'm
comparing it to ISIS. And the way that the world in the end dealt with ISIS actually was to use airstrikes. And many civilians were killed.
So you've heard the question, which is very simple, this hypothetical scenario whether RAF would be justified in doing the carpet bombardment of IRA or of a council state? And the answer is, oh no, actually they are two different things, and we compare them with ISIS. And with ISIS we did the same thing, didn't we? Yeah, you did the same thing with Dresden as well. Does that justify that? I mean, that's your best answer, that we have done this elsewhere, therefore we are doing it now? Okay, how about this? And I know Piers Morgan would, again, his stance would be that I don't deal with hypothetical scenarios. That's when I'm in difficult waters. But here is a hypothetical scenario anyway. What if Hamas's operation into Israel, it goes to the extent that the IDF people, who are terrorists, at least in the eyes of Hamas, if they end up in a residential dwelling, in a residential neighborhood, would this give Hamas a justification to do the carpet bombardment, or would it give them justification to indiscriminately throw rockets at those populations, and then to say that, oh, by the way, the IDF's bad guys were there? Would that be a good enough excuse? So far as Piers Morgan is concerned, yeah, it would be. Because there's the last thing I'm going to say, that who is designated terrorist and who isn't, and the reason I'm making this clear is because his argument would be, or anybody who is with that argument, they would say, oh, but Hamas is terrorist. Well, terrorist or no terrorist, that's not absolute. Hamas is terrorist in the eyes of the US. IDF is terrorist in the eyes of Hamas. So far as the objectivity is concerned, well, you can draw your own judgments. The US has committed the highest amount of terrorist activities on this planet. That's on paper. No one can deny that. And when they say someone is terrorist, well, by default, you have to take an opposite view and then do the investigation. So Hamas will not care. They will call them IDF. But Piers Morgan has just given them the justification to do whatever they want to do. Anyway, thank you so very much indeed. Mohammed Hijab, love you, brother.